Hello, thank you for joining our webinar on Kickstart 2021, where Andre Obradovich is going to be sharing a bit about his journey and how he came to a better level of health and well-being through some simple changes to his lifestyle. My name's Corinna Butera. I look forward to I look after the programming for the Association of Corporate Counsel Australia. In the spirit of reconciliation, ACC Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people today. So the in-house in-health committee is responsible for advocating for workplace practices that lead to improved levels of health and wellness for all members of the in-house legal profession. There's 3 subcommittees and they look after research, resources and events. And this is the second event that our subcommittee have brought to you, and we're very, very excited about this. We recognise that it's one thing to listen to a webinar and most of us know what we need to be doing to live a better quality of life. However, how do you keep that the maintenance going, and how do you stay on the road? And we all know that it's going to be long-term lifestyle changes that are going to make the real results. So when we came across Andre and heard about the amazing transformation he made in his own life, we thought, why don't we engage him to work with a pilot select group of our members and see if he can make a difference in their life too. So the way that the session is going to work today is Paul Garth from Vario, which is part of the Pinsent Masons group, is going to interview Andre and find out a little bit about Andre's journey. Then after that, we will bring me back in and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the Kickstart 2021 program and just give you a bit of an idea of the housekeeping and how it would work. Now, nobody on this webinar today is expected to take part in that program. It is totally up to you. But this is just to provide you some information so you can make an informed decision if you do want to be part of this program. So without further ado, I would like to pass this to Paul Garth from Vario. And Paul, take it away.
Thanks, Corinna. Welcome, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm an account director with Pinsent Masons' flexible legal resourcing service, Vario. We've partnered with the ACC in this inaugural in-house in-health program after starting a wellness program ourselves last year and discovering a lot of crossover with initiatives that the ACC was starting up also. We're really, really proud to be involved in sponsoring this program, and I want to again take this opportunity to thank the ACC and the committee for the opportunity. Moving on to today's program, I was sort of thinking through earlier today on how to introduce Andre, and in doing that I was doing the usual bit of sort of Google stalking and reviewing on his website, his career and life to date and achievements. And one thing that really sort of struck me was Andre seems to me to be a real person that knows how to achieve results and reach the top of his field in no matter what it is he's doing. A quick search yourselves, you'll very, very soon find out that Andre has run probably 10 plus full marathons, more half marathons than I can count on both hands and feet. Probably 5 or 6 triathlons and 10 plus half Ironman events. In fact, I think I read somewhere that after only 6 of those Ironman events, Andre was invited to participate in a World Championship event just 2 years in. I first came across Andre last year, about late last year, I think it was, at a Beyond Blue organised event in our offices. And the story of his career and journey in life really stayed with me. And in particular, I found his willingness to ask himself some really, really difficult questions and pull out some really honest answers for himself at a really difficult juncture in his life to be really quite inspiring. So rather than have me obviously summarise Andre for you, let's hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Andre, welcome.
Thanks, Paul, and hi to everyone out there. I hope, thanks for making the time to tune in. And Paul, thanks for your very wonderful welcome. And I'm just a normal guy. I've just been fortunate enough to be able to have some insights into some things that haven't served me well and changed the way I was thinking. So, you know, I'm not that good at everything. I've just been able to make some changes, and I'm just a normal guy. I'm not educated anywhere near as much as everyone listening on this call, but I've learnt lessons through other ways. So yeah, I'm looking forward to today's talk. Hopefully people get something out of today, even if they don't do the program, and I would hope that people do get something out of today to take away, regardless of whether they end up doing our Kickstart program.
I would counter that you're being pretty modest, Andre. Your athletic achievements aside, your resume, your career was, pretty stellar. You tended to reach the top in all of your places. Can you give us a bit of an overview of your life's journey and your career and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I'll probably break it down into two parts, I guess, Paul. Maybe the period from sort of like, 83 when I joined the military through till about 2014, where I was in that corporate world. Maybe I'll focus on that first, because then the last 5 years have been totally a different focus for good reason, as you sort of alluded to. So I'm now 55. I was born in Melbourne here, in Newport, in the western suburbs. Mum and Dad came out from Germany and Yugoslavia after the Second World War with nothing. Mum and Dad worked. Mum died when I was 12. My dad brought me up. Went to high school in the western suburbs. Hated school, hence the comment about the education. Left school in year 11. Went and worked in a bank. And I was so bad at working in the bank, my bank manager, who was in the Army Reserve, said, "I think you'd be good in the Army Reserve." So I saw one of those ads on TV of guys running over obstacle courses with bayonets, and I thought, oh, gee, that'd be good as a 17-year-old to do that and get paid having fun. So I joined the Army Reserve in Williamstown, the Commandos, and then I loved that so much that I joined the regular Army. And basically, 83, I joined the Army full-time as a soldier. Did that for 3 years, and I was such a bad soldier that my commanding officer said, "You need to go to Duntroon and become an officer," because the joke was that you didn't send good soldiers to become officers. So I then went to Duntroon and did the 18-month officer selection course, completed that, graduated as a lieutenant, and then I sort of served from 83 to, or 85, 80, 87 to 2000 or to 91, sorry, as an officer in the Army. And I was in the Signals Corps, and I got to spend time overseas. Saw a lot of scary stuff, saw a lot of dead bodies, saw a lot of things that would, sort of you think might impact you, but I don't think they did. I didn't get a chance to deploy to Afghanistan or Iraq because that wasn't happening then, but I served in Cambodia for 9 months with the United Nations. And probably one of the highlights of my career was doing the SAS, the Special Air Service Regiment selection course in 1989 as a 24-year-old. And doing that course, I think, taught me about things in life, about how hard you can push your body mentally and physically and still survive, because that's a pretty hard course to do. In the first week of that 4-week course, I lost 10 kilos of weight, and I did have weight to lose because I was a bit chunky then. And yeah, that sort of set me up for the rest of my time, I think, in terms of learning about physical adaptation. So I served in the military. It was great. Got to the rank of major, and then I was about to retire, or about to think about retiring at 20 years. Not retiring and not working, but getting out of the Army, because I didn't want to go on the promotion train because I wasn't educated enough. I didn't want to go to staff college and write essays and papers to be a full colonel. I wanted to be in the field with the soldiers. And at the same time, a friend of mine that was working in a company called Cisco tried to convince me to come and work for them as a sales guy. And it's quite funny in those days, you know, when I said how much do I get paid, because I was on top money in the army. I was on $57,000 a year, and I tell you, in 1991, that was a lot of money, you know, in that sort of that time frame, and or sorry, around 99, that was a lot of money, and I think the Prime Minister then was earning $140,000. I think.
Wow.
And he said, mate, you're going to earn over 200 grand. And I'm like, you're on drugs. What the hell? Who earns that money, let alone some idiot that left school at year 11 who's been in the army? So I said no. And that probably cost me $1 million because the stocks in the company were going crazy. So I waited 12 months and I was sick of doing this job in the army and in Melbourne. And I didn't, you know, I wasn't going to get promoted because I didn't want to go and do all these courses. So I was going to be a major forever. And so I left and joined this company called Cisco, and I earned a lot of money. I worked hard, but it was great. I was traveling the world and got promoted all through different positions, and I ended up running a global team there. And I stayed there till 2011, 2012. So I was there for, you know, quite a number of years, and it was great. It was a great job. Worked with great people, and yeah, there was a lot of stress, a lot of numbers we had to capture and sales things, but I think the environment was really good. It was a lot of teamwork, and the culture was really good. And I guess that's the difference between, you know, what I did till then until what I experienced after that in a different company. So that's where my life sort of changed. Do you want me to go into sort of that part now and explain what happened there?
Yeah, maybe before we move on, I'm kind of interested in
Sure.
exploring the difference between life as an elite soldier and life as an elite salesman.
Sure.
You know, within Cisco systems, going from, you know, what I assume is very regimented to corporate life, and the different stresses. I imagine both have stresses, as you say, but you know, to this point, they're obviously stresses you were coping with. It sounds like you were flourishing within both those environments.
Well, I wasn't an elite soldier, right? But I was a good soldier and a good officer. And the difference, I guess, the difference between, you know, my role and what I did in the military and the corporate world in Cisco was that, I guess, on a leadership perspective, people in the corporate world didn't follow orders. Like, you know,
Sure.
you had to sort of negotiate with people and appeal to their instinct of what was in it for them. Whereas in the military, you didn't sort of ask questions. And in those days, people were generally pretty smart about what was a good thing to do and what wasn't a good thing to do in terms of the military. So that was one difference. I guess the other difference was that you had to be, one of the challenges I found coming from the military where you trusted everyone was going in the corporate world. You know, I wear my heart on my sleeve, so I say what I think. And in the corporate world, some people would use that to get at you or keep something on you for later on if they needed to try and undermine you or something. And I was sort of a bit naive thinking that everyone was on the same team and everyone in the company, you know, sure, in the military, generally, everyone was pushing to the same job and there was no politics. In those days, there was no real politics or things like that happening. But in the corporate world, that was more, and I wasn't aware of that as much. But I think the things that helped me was the, you know, driven nature, the ability to work long hours. Like I was working till 2 a.m. nearly every night, which was totally stupid. Like, especially when I had my global role. But I had people in England, people in Asia, my boss was in America, people, and they would always schedule meetings for 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. And I wasn't going to say no because I was a soldier. Like, and the other thing is if I said no, then maybe someone might not like me and my bonus might get affected. And, you know, in the corporate world, it was all about the money for me, money and position. Whereas in the military, it was all about doing your job and your position and your soldiers, not about the money because your pay didn't change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. And so the next sort of change for you after Cisco seems to be, in a way, what brought you to where you are today, and obviously a very, very different life. Yeah, would you mind sort of moving on to that next stage?
Sure. And yeah, absolutely. And I'll just remind everyone that, what I talk about now specifically is sort of Chatham House rules, because I'll go into some things that are quite personal, and the company I'm going to talk about needs to stay in this context. I'm sure if you search online, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about, but just keep that in mind. So I was poached from Cisco to go and work with this company called Samsung. And I was sold on this great opportunity of my life to lead a team and earn all this extra money and be on TV and build this business in Australia for their enterprise business. So dealing with enterprise customers, because traditionally that company had only dealt with the telcos and consumers selling fridges, but they wanted to bridge into corporate companies to sell solutions. So they hired me, much to the recommendation of a guy that was a friend of mine in Cisco. He's no longer a friend of mine, because he basically didn't tell me what it was like there. And it was really interesting that I remember my farewell at Cisco, and I knew I was making the wrong decision. I was standing there at my farewell and I was crying because I don't know what it was, but I'll never forget it. I knew I was making the wrong decision taking this new job. And it was sort of like, not that I've ever been in this situation, but I guess it was like, if I can draw a parallel, I think it would feel like I was leaving this perfect marriage to be with something else that I hadn't really experienced enough of to make a good decision. So it was the start of my downfall in mental health. So within 3 days of starting this new job, I started to get worried already. So I rocked up to this environment. It was like a footballer, Australian rules footballer, going to play gridiron in America. Well, actually gridiron in Russia, because not only was the culture probably different, the game was different, but they spoke a different language. And I'm not meaning that in a racist way. I'm saying the people in this company were rude and abusive and corporately horrible from the minute I was there. Not to me, because I was like one of the senior people, but to all the people around me. And it is nothing I've ever seen before in my life, where I'd be sitting at my desk, and people are not going to believe this, or maybe you are as lawyers, right? You may have heard of stories like this where the Korean expats who worked in Korea, they come to Australia to take the important jobs because that's how this company runs the business. They don't trust people that aren't from their country in a lot of ways. It's because it's their money, the company's money, and it all goes back to Korea. They would stand there and finger point people and tell them they were lazy and they should have stayed in the office till midnight working. The managing director is going to be very upset with them. The HR department would send emails out every morning detailing a list of people in the company that weren't parked in the right car, weren't parked in their car park by 9 a.m. in the morning, and criticizing them, and in this email to the whole company in Australia. It was, I was like, what the hell is this a dream? And this is in the first week. So essentially I started kicking back and I started pushing back on this stuff, and it got worse. I was being paid $500,000 a year, right? So some people say, well, you're earning the big bucks, you should put up with that crap. Trust me, it was totally inappropriate. And as I go further, you'll understand what ended up happening. But I started pushing back because they wanted me to hire 70 people to run this division. So I started hiring people because I thought, I'm tough. I can change this. I've been in the army. I did the SAS course. I can change this. And that's why they brought me here, to change this, to be successful. And that's what the MD was saying. But the problem was, all the people around him and his PA were bullying me like anything. They wanted me to change to be like them.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. So to cut a really long story short, so you can maybe ask some questions about this part of it, you know, I put up with this for 14 months. And over that 14 months, I went from being a really energetic, healthy person. I was overweight, you know, I was like 75, 80 kilos. So I wasn't fat, but I was a little bit overweight. But I turned grey. I had diarrhea for nearly 18 months from the stress. I couldn't sleep. I ended up having chest pain from anxiety. I ended up going to my doctor, and after about 12 months, I should have went after 2 weeks because I thought I could change these people. And he basically sent me to a psychologist, who sent me to a forensic psychologist, who said, "You're really sick. You've got PTSD." She thought it was from the army, and I said, "Look, it's not from the army. It's from going from a safe place where I had a great job in Cisco to going to Mars and working with Martians and being bullied. That's made me sick. It's trauma."
Yeah.
And she agreed that's what it was. And I still see her now. Every month I see her to help just tune me up a bit, because I'd still do have mental health issues, but that's largely managed by the behaviours and things I do. And we'll talk about that a bit.
Yep.
And it sort of came to a point where one morning I was, and this is sort of the really confidential part, one morning I was going to work and I used the train, and I nearly did something near a train. I won't explain any more than that. And I didn't. And that was the day I rang my boss in Sydney after 14 months, and I told him I was leaving work because I was so sick and I wasn't coming back. And I then engaged, well, during that process, when I realised I wasn't well, I engaged a law firm to help me. And I will say that Josh Bornstein, I think his name is that, from Morris Blackburn, and some other lady there who's left there, did an amazing job helping me work out what I needed to do to protect myself to leave and not be disparaged and all this sort of stuff. But I basically left the company a shattered man, and I slept for 6 months. And I'll never be the same person ever again. It affected my marriage, it affected my kids, it affected my life. But I'm here now, and I'm healthier, much healthier than I was then. But I thought my life was over, essentially.
Thanks for sharing what's obviously a pretty raw story still, and sharing it again. I recall from when you spoke in our offices, one of the things that stayed with me was you said you'd never imagined yourself being in a situation where you would be stressed. You'd been in the army, you'd passed the no doubt grueling SAS selection course. At Cisco you had targets. You never imagined yourself affected, but I think it's a trap we can all fall into. It can affect people. It does affect people. It affects everybody. Do you think that sort of mentality of I'm not the sort of person it will affect, or perhaps that your persona from the army, being that sort of, seeing yourself as that sort of person, did that help you or hinder you in that sort of corporate world?
In the Samsung role, I think that hindered me. I sort of felt like I had to be tough and I had to look after my people, because I'd hired 70 people. I'd hired about 50 by the time I realised I wasn't going to be able to cope and stay in this place. I ended up telling people not to come to interviews, and I'd say, look, you don't want to be here, it's horrible. And I said, don't tell anyone I told you that, right? But I think until the pain got so bad for me that I was thinking about taking my own life, that's the thing that made the difference for me. The fact that I hadn't slept, I had I was sick in the stomach. I was told by doctors I needed to get out. I was on sleeping tablets. That pain for me wasn't enough to make me make the change. And I think thinking I could handle it and being tough was part of the problem.
Understand. We've got a related question someone's written in. They're wondering what learnings from the army are useful in the corporate world. For example, leadership styles or anything like that. Is there anything that sort of made you transition from the army to corporate life, easy? Things you could immediately apply?
Well, one of the things was I was an outdoor ski tour leader and rock climbing leader for adventure training to help soldiers develop the skills required in battle through challenging themselves. And one of the things we did there was a model of leadership called the situational leadership model by Blanchard and Hersey, I think it's called. And it talks about different stages of people's development and how you use different supportive and directive behaviours based on their state of learning and their abilities that they have, and you have to modify those throughout. So that's something that I used a lot and I still use a lot now. That's one thing that sticks out to me.
Great, thanks for that. So I obviously it's obvious why you had to get to the point, why you got to the point in your life where you had to ask these really hard questions. But it's still not an easy thing to do for a lot of people. You have a lifestyle, you have a family, you have mortgage payments, you have all these things. It's very difficult often to ask those questions and come up with the answer that I've got to change. But this is obviously something that you did. Your life is clearly very different to what it was 15 years ago. Can you talk us through that sort of change period?
Sure. Well, the decision to leave, I pretty much had no option. I was that sick, I had to, right? So I guess that maybe what we're talking about now is where did I go to from there and how did I get to here? Is that sort of what you mean? Yeah, okay. So I basically slept for 6 months, reconnected with my family because I was working in Sydney, in that other job most of the week. And I started to think about, once I started to get better, I had basically a year where I had to sort of work out what I was going to do. And I started to think about, well, what are my passions? What do I enjoy doing? And what am I good at? And what could I do for work? Because I was told you are never going to be able to go. You are probably unlikely to be able to go and work for another company full time or be in a situation where you're in a demanding position where you have to make hard decisions and be stressed. So I had to think about, well, okay, I've got a passion for marathons. I'd run a few marathons by then. I've got a passion for leadership. Maybe I can do some leadership coaching. So essentially what I did was I went and did a ICF certification. So the ICF is the International Coaching Federation, because I thought I could go and get a job as a coach working for executives. So I thought, what are all the things I like doing? And then I did this course that was like an 8-month course. It's one of the best coaching courses you can do. There's a lot of face-to-face. So I progressed that. And at the same time, I was developing more of an interest in triathlon and multi-sport things. So at the same time, I started to get into doing triathlons. This is once I got a bit healthier from where I was. The issue is, once I'd completed the coaching program course, and I did get some work with a company that did coaching work in big companies, I found that what I thought I could do wouldn't work because I had to be in an office in a suit, and that had triggers for me, unfortunately. And I'd have to be, the way they wanted it was I'd have to be in there at like 8:30 in the morning and finish at 4. So I just couldn't cope with that. I was still exhausted and getting over my illness. So then I basically, I decided, right, well, I like fitness. I went and did my Cert 3, Cert 4 in personal training, fitness training, allied health, triathlon coaching programs, and I launched my own business doing that, combining my coaching certification into the fitness and the weight loss using my nutrition approach, which I implemented for myself once I left Samsung, focusing on my own health.
Understood. Yeah, great. We have a question before we move on. We can probably get this answered as well now. Someone's asked, when you were at Samsung, or as you're going through all of this, how are your family sort of reacting? Were they encouraging you to leave as soon as possible? Were they sort of, they must have seen what it was doing for you?
Yeah, well, the kids didn't really see it because we wanted to hide it. Well, I wanted to hide it from them, and my wife knew something was going on because essentially I'd lost, like, another thing that happened was I had no libido for that whole time. So she's like, what's going on here? You know, you don't have a girlfriend in Sydney, do you? And I'm like, no, trust me, I don't. But I was trying to hide some of that from her because I didn't want her to worry, and I just thought, no, I'd fix it. But when it got to about 12 months in, we had a school function and I'd been on Sky Business News, and someone at the function was I'm there in my beautiful suit, all this BS that I thought was important to me. And someone said, oh, hi, Andre, I saw you on the news, how's your new job? And I just broke down in tears in front of my kids and my wife, and I had to leave. So then I couldn't sort of hide anything. We had to have a conversation with the kids and said, look, Dad's working in a place that's horrible. And and we said, don't worry, everything will be all right. We didn't sort of say to them, well, if we have to sell the house, we'll sell the house and blah, blah, blah. But my wife and I had that discussion, but we didn't need to do that, thank goodness. And I'm still here and I didn't kill myself.
Yeah. There's only so much you can shoulder by yourself for so long. Inevitably, it tends to come out, I think.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about now, at your consulting company. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and maybe a little bit about kinds of people or groups that you work with.
Yeah, great. All right. So as I said, I converted my sort of idea about doing executive coaching to more health and wellness coaching because I'd been through that journey myself. So for the last sort of 5 years, I've been working with individual people, as in just individuals, not companies. I've started doing some work with companies now that I've got a lot of testimonials and a bit of a reputation or whatever, but my main focus is with individuals, just everyday people who want to optimize their life, both the mental side of it, the emotional side, and then the physical side. And I do coaching programs pretty much all with individuals one-on-one around weight loss. And that approach is a bit of against what I call conventional stupidity, because most people think you lose weight by exercising, and I say no, it's not calories in, calories out. You've got to get your food right. So I coach, the majority of my business is one-on-one coaching people just like this. In fact, I had a session before we started this session today with a client in Malvern, and it's one-on-one coaching around weight loss using a low carbohydrate approach to eating, and that's probably 70% of what I do. But during that, we focus on sleep, and I use a biometric set of tools to monitor people's sleep, because sleep is very important. And then I focus on coaching triathletes and marathoners and runners. So, and that's all custom work that I do one-on-one, but I use a range of different techniques that are different to the conventional fitness industry approach. So if someone comes to me who might be 10 kilos overweight and they say, oh, I want to do a triathlon, I won't coach them, because it's, in my opinion, it's dangerous. They first need to improve their body composition. So, so I'm very specific about how I do my endurance and fitness coaching. They have to eat low carb, they have to have good body composition, and they have to use a couple of different methods that I do, which are, once again, totally the opposite to what the mainstream fitness industry says about smashing yourself and working really hard every time you train. So I've sort of built this approach that is different to what normal coaches do around food and endurance training, and that works for me. And I have specific clients I work with, and it works really well because I give them a customized solution. And it's everyone from, I've got a doctor in America who's a trauma surgeon. I had this chief investment officer of one of America's biggest investment banks that I was working with. He was a swimmer. And I've got a single mother in Baldwin here who's the head of maths at some private school that I work with. everyday people, but they have to be committed to changing their health and their life essentially. And I love it. It's just really rewarding. And the great thing about having this technology is I do every session like this to every client wherever they are in the world.
Great. Yeah, look, it's a great thing to help people to, as you say, optimise their life. We've got a question that probably fits in well here, and if you've typed in a question as well, just bear in mind we will probably have time at the end for questions, so we'll fit those in then, and if we don't get to, if it sort of falls out of sequence with the discussion. But this one fits with probably where we're at the moment, Andre. Somebody's asked, what is good body composition?
Yeah, great. Okay, well, that's a great question. And one way to determine that is looking in the mirror when you're in your underwear. And that's one thing to do because a lot of people don't do that. Another way is to look at your waist measurement. And if your waist measurement is more than half your height, that generally stipulates that you probably could lose some weight. BMI is another method, but it's not maybe as accurate, but I do find it quite accurate. And then you can also, if you have smart scales, the scales that you have, and they have a body fat percentage, that's a very good way to judge your body composition. But frankly, the best thing to do is to get naked and look in the mirror. And if you're not happy with what you see, it's not your fault. Honestly, it's not your fault. You've just been taking the wrong advice, and you just got to learn what the right advice is, and then you can make changes if you want to. I'm about 7% body fat on the Garmin scales, and I think about probably 18 to 20% is probably a healthy range.
Right. I think if I stood and looked at myself naked in the mirror, I'd run in fright.
Well, that's what made me realise I had to go from 80 kilos to 63. It was a moment I never forget.
Is that right? Great. Now, the Kickstart program that we're going to be running with, you're going to help us run with the In-House in Health program. Can you outline the Kickstart program for us?
Absolutely. Well, it's been really good working with Karina and yourself on this. I'm really excited about it. And as I said, I think people that sign up for it will get a lot out of it. So the program has two sort of aspects to it. We're going to do a 3-weekly coaching call with the 30, I believe it's a 30 people limit that sign up to the call. So every 3 weeks, we're going to do an hour-long coaching call. That's one element. And the second element is the content delivery, which is the learning side, which is deployed on my health and wellness app. And so I'll talk about both of those subjects. So there's a range of subjects, everything from, excuse me, nutrition to exercise to stress to how we maintain that. And there's a whole lot of coaching tools and downloadable content that is on the app. So what we'll be doing is in each session, we will be doing a bit of a break up of the first part of each session will be a reflection on how have we gone in the last couple of weeks with the goals that we set from the previous session. So the first time will always be, okay, everyone, you set some goals, maybe who wants to share how they went. I might ask questions, get some interactivity going and talk about challenges people have had with their goals. The second part will be about 20 minutes or so of a presentation of key highlights of the content that they've consumed over the previous 3 weeks. So let's say today was the first coaching session. Tomorrow, everyone would get a text or a notification saying the new content's loaded. They'd go into the app and they would hit on the topic and all the content would be there that they can read from any mobile device. There's videos, there's links to different articles, there's a whole lot of written text, and there might be some specific tools or PDFs that they can download related to that content. So they'd have basically 3 weeks to sort of consume that content. And as I said, a lot of it's on video-based content, and then we'll, do our session. So in that session, I'm not going to go through the 3 weeks of content. I will spend 20 minutes highlighting the most important things and also taking questions about the content. So the first part is, what do we learn from our goals we set? The next part is, here's some highlights and what questions you have about the content you've just read. And then the last 20 minutes or so will be, okay, now let's set some goals. And the goals are the participants' goals, not my goals. It's all about what the participant wants to get out of it. You know,
So there's room for individual goals within here rather than this as a group.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's totally individualized. I'm not going to be able to talk to every single person, but every single person will develop their own goals around what they want to get. So can I maybe share an example?
Yeah.
All right. So let's say someone isn't sleeping well at night, and during the learnings, they learn that alcohol could be a contributor, because if they're waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's their liver detoxifying the alcohol generally. So let's say someone to themselves says, oh, that's my problem. I don't have to know. You don't have to tell me. It's okay. You don't have to tell everyone on the call. But you may develop your own goal that might be, okay, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm going to try and not have alcohol on those nights, and I'm going to look at what happens to my sleep. So that's their own individual goal. You know, I'm not going to tell anyone. I might share some examples, but people are smarter. People are going to be smart enough in your group to understand the learnings and work out what they need to change.
Okay.
And then they'll set those goals, and then in the next session 3 weeks later, we'll actually sort of rehash how did they go.
Okay. So over the course of the 3 weeks, you're releasing content. How much time are we talking about? How much reading? How much time commitment over the course of those 3 weeks in between sessions?
Well, for the nutrition content, which is the first topic, there's a basic content section and then an advanced content section. So there's going to be a lot more in that element than the rest of them, because that's the most important in my opinion. Over the 3 weeks, I would say you could spend probably, you know, an hour a week.
Right.
And if you wanted to go in depth, you could spend 2 or 3 hours a week. But as I say, a lot of it is video based. So one of the topics, I think, on gluten, about bread, which is one of my favorite topics, has 2 or 3 videos that are an hour long. Now, you can be, not that we're driving cars much, but while you're washing the dishes or out in the garden, you can be playing it with headphones and just listening to it. So I'm trying to make it as much video or audio based content as possible. I mean, that's how I learn. I have a podcast going every minute of the day when I'm training, and I train 18 hours a week. So I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Sure. Okay. So, 7 or 8 minutes a day, if you wanted to, pace it out, or if you're like me and you leave it all to the last minute, then you cram read just before the next session.
Well, you could, but I would encourage people to do a topic. So in nutrition, there's maybe 10 topics, to do one topic and complete that topic before they go to the next one, or allocate some time in their calendar to actually do something. So instead of being on Facebook or social media or watching TV or Netflix, allocate some time to do your study, because this is all free. And I guarantee people, if they read this stuff, if they want to, it'll totally change their life. And it's free. People pay a lot of money for this with individual coaching, and they've just got to make some time and be willing to open their minds to a different approach to what, can change their health.
It's a powerful thought. Free and change your life is, that's a pretty powerful thought and worth devoting a bit of time to, I would think. Yeah. And what about the level of preconditioning that you might need for this program? Like, if someone like me that's been carb loading for 30 years, or I'll put my hand up to saying, yeah, I'm the bad sleeper. I have bad sleeping habits. How much preconditioning do we need?
Look, I think everyone will get what they want out of this based on how bad their pain is. So in terms of preconditioning, do you maybe just explain that a bit more to me?
So do I need to be, for example, do I need a level of fitness? If my goal might be to lose weight, that's probably one of my goals, as we've spoken about. I've been losing weight this year, and I'd be keen to lose more and probably a little bit quicker if I can, or maybe what I'm doing is optimum. Do I need a level of fitness for that? Or you know, is there any sort of level I need to be at?
I see. Okay, yeah. What are there any prerequisites? Yeah. Okay. No, there's none apart from one,
Okay.
and that is being prepared to listen to something that is a bit against the grain, or what I like to say is to get away from conventional stupidity. So if you're prepared to think about something that might be different to what I think is the right approach, as an example, I'll give everyone these free couple of tips, right? If you think eating fat makes you fat, you are 100% wrong. It doesn't. It's sugar. And so if you can get your head around believing that, because that's exactly what I did, right? I was seeing a dietitian and paying $200 an hour for her to keep me fat. And I was starving, and I was running 70 kilometers a week. And I was always at the physio because she put me on a low fat diet. I was eating porridge and grains, no fat. I was starving all the time. That gave me so much pain that I was willing to listen to a talk on paleo and then low carb. And those two talks I went to totally changed my life. And I've been 63 kilos for 5 years, and I'm never hungry, and I eat twice a day. And it's got nothing to do with exercise. It's all about the food. So what I'm saying is that is the biggest thing is if you've been struggling with weight or sleep or exercise, it's not because you've been doing the wrong thing. Maybe you got some bad habits, but it's all about the fact that you've been given the wrong advice. Like if you can't sleep, stop drinking caffeine after 12 o'clock during the day. Get off your electronic devices, 2 hours before you go to sleep.
Yeah, understand.
So I'm not going to tell anyone to do any exercise.
Yep.
If people want to exercise, I'll give you some guidance, and the exercise will be totally different than if you go to the gym, because I'll be telling you to go for a walk with the dog, go walking, do yoga, especially if you're overweight, because exercise is not going to help you lose weight. It's all about having a proper meal plan and cooking and preparing good, healthy food and sleeping more and having less stress.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Look, it's probably a good time maybe to throw over to Karina with some of the details about how people can sign up for the program, because we're starting to get a few questions, and I want to leave plenty of time to get through a lot of these questions with you. So thanks, Andre, for the presentation and telling us about your journey and where things are at and the outline of the program. Karina, would you mind just telling members how they can sign up, what commitments they need to make, a little bit of housekeeping about the registration process? Someone's asked, for example, how much does the program cost and how do you join? So there's one question answered. And in the meantime, if anyone has any more questions, we've got about 3 or 4 at the moment. So I'm sure there'll be a few more that come through. Type them in, and once Karina's done, we'll go through them with Andre.
And I'll go quick because I see there's some really good questions coming through and questions that I certainly have been interested in. So basically, when the in-house health committee looked at this, we wanted to do something that wasn't just telling people what to do or giving them information. We wanted to be practical and guided and a journey. We have no idea. This is a test pilot, so we have no idea what the results are going to be. Andre, I have every faith that Andre is going to take whoever participates on a really amazing journey. So we've opened it up as a pilot for up to 30 people, and it's for free. The program will run till the end of the year. I think we've got the last session scheduled, if I remember rightly, for the first week of December. It might be the last of November, but it's around about the end of the year. So in time for your Christmas celebrations, you should be happier, healthier, and feeling, ready to take on 2021. To sign up, you'll be sent, everybody who is registered for this call will get an email which will give them a link to a survey. Now, the reason there's a survey is because A, we need to measure this program. So what we want to do, you'll be asked questions about what your satisfaction levels are, of where your health and fitness is right now. You will not be asked anything such as how much do you weigh, how much do you want to weigh, how much do you eat, how much do you exercise. That is not our interest. As Andre has specified, this program is an individual program that we're running in groups. You do not have to share anything about how you're applying it in your life to anybody, unless you want to. If you have questions that you want to ask Andre in the different group coaching sessions. So participation is free for the first 30 people who register on 2 conditions. Condition number 1 is that you read through the survey questions that you asked and you really feel that you are motivated and committed to completing the program and getting the most out of it. If you're going into this and you think that Andre is going to have some sort of miracle formula that all you've got to do is say kumbaya once a day, we prefer you not to participate. It will involve some sort of lifestyle changes of some sort. Otherwise, if you don't make any changes at all, you will be in exactly the same situation as you are right now in 4 months' time. So there needs to be a really serious commitment to sticking with the program, to having an open mind to what Andre is sharing, but at the same time taking the pieces of it that work for you. So that's number 1 criteria. Number 2 criteria is there will be a survey at the end of the program, and we will expect you to also complete that survey so that we can measure the program, see whether it's worth repeating next year for more members, and find out a little bit from you about whether we should be charging, how much we should be charging, and how we could improve it, whether we don't run with it at all, because this is a pilot and that is why it's free. So there are those conditions associated with it. If anybody after today has got any questions, they can email me. I think pretty much anybody who's a member should know my email address by now, but that'll be on the email that you get sent out anyway. So I'm happy to answer any further questions about the actual housekeeping and running of the program. And I don't want to take any more time now because there's some awesome questions. So I will throw back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Karina. Yeah, any questions on the program, I'll throw them back to Karina. But Andre, a question that first question that I've got off the rank is, what's the one most important question you've asked yourself or continue to ask yourself on your journey?
Oh, wow, that's good. Is what I'm doing continuing to support my mental health?
Got it. And it's an important, massively important question.
Mm.
Yeah. We've got one here, actually a couple of the same. Oh, sorry, you've answered.
Well, we can still go through some of those if you want.
Yeah, somebody else has asked a similar question about catering to vegans. Does your approach to nutrition cater to vegetarians? And someone else asked, sorry, I'm just flicking through.
Yeah, I can answer those if you want.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so typically I won't work with vegans, and that's nothing personal. It's just the approach I take with low carb. It's very hard to prescribe or give advice using low carb nutrition to a vegan. If you want to eat like that, that's fine. If you want to get other things out of the program around exercise and stress and sleep management, that's fine, because it's not just about nutrition. But I'll tell you now up front, my approach about working with people on food is you need to eat animal products, proper grass-fed, well-raised products, not cage lot fed grain-based feeding of cattle, to get the essential amino acids and for optimal health, in my opinion. vegetarians can work, because generally eggs and fish is a good part of food that we can work with, but it's quite difficult to support vegans, and I won't work with them because it just doesn't work for me. It's nothing personal, that's just my approach. Does that help answer that, Paul?
Yep, no, that's perfect. That's great. Thank you. Somebody also asked, are you an advocate of the keto plan?
Good question. It depends. Keto is a whole lot of mystery and mastery, and everything on Facebook and on the internet that's generally free doesn't necessarily meet what people need. So I'd be very wary of saying you're on a keto plan. I support and subscribe a low carbohydrate approach to eating, which is not keto, and everyone has a different approach to keto in terms of the percentages of fat and the macronutrients. So it can be seen as a bit of a buzz thing. And there's a whole lot of stuff around dirty keto, which means you eat meat and no vegetables, which is totally wrong in my opinion.
Sure. Fantastic. Someone's asked, or rather commented, that they'd like to sign up, but they're not exactly sure. Can they have an initial consult first in order to determine if this is in fact for me? Or perhaps can they put their questions through Karina for you to provide more answers?
Yeah, well, that'd be a good approach, but I think if you really want to see what I'm about, if you visit my website, and on the front page there's clients that talk about what I do with them, there's testimonials, there's a YouTube page I have. If you want to see what you're going to be getting and who you're going to work with, that's the best way, because I'm upfront. I don't hide anything. That's probably the best way to sort of get the best information, I would think.
Got it. Great. Sorry, the other part, so the person that asked the vegan question can also ask whether they can do the program without any gym equipment, and Andre did type an answer to that, which is basically he won't be prescribing any exercise, rather than he'll be focusing on concepts and hints. Let's put that out there in case anyone else had the same question. Somebody's just asked, you mentioned making choices, Andre. How do you make the right choice if you're not in the right headspace?
I think for me, around when I had my issues, it was about focusing on a long-term vision of where I wanted to be in 5 or 10 years and what that picture looked like. So I did a lot of visualization work about, I might be here now, but where do I want to be? And if this is 5 years away, where do I want to be in 6 months and 6 months and 12 months along that journey? And understand that sometimes that might not be a straight line, but knowing what the ultimate vision is of where I want to be, which was, you know, winning marathons or winning races or being like this, and describing that and sort of focusing on that, not focusing on why did this happen to me? Why did I have to leave this job? Why aren't I earning all this money? Why did I nearly kill myself? You know, that was not very helpful for me. And I did focus on the why, the judging part of it for months. And until I got over that and focused on where do I want to be, that's when my headspace changed, because I could look at it and I say, well, it's up to me. No one's gonna give me a coaching job. No one's gonna come and give me a bag of money. Like,
Yeah.
If I didn't do the hard work, I wouldn't be here now.
Of course.
So,
yeah.
You know.
That's great. We've got one final question, which is probably perfect from timing wise. We've just hit 5 o'clock, so we might be able to squeeze it in very quickly. What's your stance on needing to set challenges to drive forward? For example, needing to aim to run a half marathon, or is it just enough to want to live better?
I think that sets up, similar to what I've just talked about, is where do you want to be in your life? How do you want to feel when you wake up every morning? What do you want to achieve? And you need to sort of look at emotional, physical, and mental issues, and maybe have, in fact, one of the tools we've got that everyone can access when they do the program is a sort of long-term planning chart that focuses on those areas. Is how do you want to feel? How do you want to be as a person? What do you want to achieve? And you can break those things down into personal stuff, work stuff, athletic endeavors. And, I think setting goals is very important, but they don't have to be around, running a half marathon or achieving a certain body composition. It could just be feeling better, having more energy. And that's what we're really trying to do, is help people at the end of this course to say, That program I did changed my life. I sleep better. Fantastic. Sleep is so important. Or I've realized that maybe drinking less alcohol at night has made me less grumpy. Or I've changed how I eat and I'm so much more effective at work today. I think they're really simple things. And the last thing I'll say is, if you aren't getting gains from what you're doing the wrong thing, and it's not your fault. You've just been given the wrong advice. So it's time to take the glasses off, the blinkers off, and open your mind to doing something different. And I guarantee you, if you put the work in, you'll make it happen.
The results. Great. All right, Andre, we need to wrap it up there. Thank you so much again for joining us and your talk today. I'm looking forward to the program. Thank everyone for staying with us and the chat and the questions today. Karina, unless there's anything else from you.
I would actually like to close by thanking the In-House and Health Committee for all the work they've been doing. They're an amazing committee, and there's lots of new things coming up. So keep an eye out for all things in-house and health. And also thank Vario from St. Masons for their amazing support, and Paul for your time today. Fantastic. And thank you everyone for attending. And Andre, thank you so much.